There is a musical that's funny, heart-wrenching, and impossible to shake coming to Austin this spring. Dear Evan Hansen is on stage at Zach Theater April 8th through May 17th, featuring Grammy Award-winning music including Waving Through a Window and You Will Be Found. Dear Evan Hansen is a 6-time Tony Award-winning musical for the digital age that the Washington Post calls one of the most remarkable shows in music theater history. Get your tickets now at zachtheater.org.
Dewar makes denim and apparel that feel amazing and look great. I'm addicted to my Dewar Performance denim jeans. They're the perfect blue, they're wonderfully stretchy, they're incredibly comfortable. And they're really the only jeans I need for work or for lounging at home or on the go. I know you'll love Dewar as much as I do, so it's time for you to get your own pair. Check out shopdewar.com/CCAustin. You'll get 15% off your first order. Don't wait. Go to shopdeuer.com/CCAustin for 15% off. shopdewar.com/CCAustin.
Today on CityCast Austin, the murder of Moriah Wilson shook this city in 2022. After the swift police response and the international manhunt leading to the killer's capture, we were left stunned by its senseless nature. So who was Moriah Wilson? A new documentary gives us an intimate look at the ripples of her loss, and it is out on Netflix tomorrow. It's Thursday, April 2nd. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here with Marina Zinovich and Evan Hayes. For those of you that don't know, they are the director and producer of a movie that comes out on Netflix April 3rd called The Truth and Tragedy of Moriah Wilson. Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Hi, Nikki.
Now, off top, I'm obsessed. I actually came to the screening. I cannot get it out of my brain. I can't stop talking about it. And just to give everyone a quick refresher, in 2022, Moriah Wilson was in Austin for a cycling race and staying at a friend's house when she was shot and killed by an Austinite named Caitlin Armstrong. Wilson was 25 years old and had been out with Armstrong's boyfriend before she was murdered. And then after the murder, Armstrong fled the country using her sister's passport, got a nose job, and was living in Costa Rica. Now, Austin police used lots of surveillance, camera footage, and other technology to solve the crime, and Armstrong was convicted of the murder and sentenced to 90 years in prison in November 2023. And y'all made a movie about it. What did it feel like to have it premiere at South by Southwest?
It was amazing to premiere at South by Southwest. I felt that it had to premiere in Austin. And I think for the family, what was best for me was hearing Matt Wilson say at the second screening that this was closure for him.
Yeah.
I don't think it could get better than that, because I think maybe they were looking for closure and this was a good way of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Evan?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. On the one hand, having the Wilsons come back to Austin for the first time since the conclusion of the trial was obviously an intense experience. And it was an intense experience, I think, just to be together with them again. But to Marina's point, I think that the Wilson family was so interested and concerned with supporting Moriah's legacy.
Yeah.
And this film maybe allowed them to feel like they had achieved that in some regard. And the idea of kind of remembrance of Moriah felt very kind of present in the experience of showing this film to audiences. And so it did feel like it was cathartic. It certainly was for me, to be there and put the film out into the world finally and see people's kind of positive, supportive, empathetic reaction to it.
I have to tell you, at that first screening, I had to sit on my hands to keep from hugging every single person in that family. Because I was like, I just want to embrace this family with so much love and so much like, I don't like, just like, I'm grateful for sharing their story and being so vulnerable. It was a really oddly comforting environment. It's like we all wanted to hold the space for them. And I think that's because of the way you portrayed it. It's like everybody in that room wanted to protect these people. It was very strange. Nothing like that's ever happened to me before.
I think it's a direct reflection on the Wilsons themselves, though, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this story existed. We didn't know who the Wilsons were, right? It existed in our kind of public consciousness.
Mm.
Um, and in media already. But when we first met the Wilsons, everything that you just shared was evident on the surface, right?
Yeah.
As soon as we met them, they're these beautiful people who have these really wonderful values, who are so community oriented, who have such a connection to the outdoors and cycling and what that provides you, not just athletically, but from a kind of mental health standpoint.
Yeah.
And so it's so nice to hear you say that, Nikki, because we saw that right at the beginning. Right. And
Yeah.
without that, there's no way to tell this movie in the way that we were hoping to tell it, and in the way that it sounds like you reacted to it.
I think it's them and also everyone else,
Yeah.
like Cash and how she
Yes.
handled it, the DAs,
Yes.
the cops, like everyone was so invested in doing the right thing for Mo, and you can like feel it.
And to clarify, listeners, Cash is Caitlin Cash, Mariah's friend, who she was visiting in Austin. And Cash was the one who actually found Mariah dead in her house. And Mo is a nickname for Mariah. It's so funny. You're literally touching on the question I was going to ask you. And that is like, was it difficult to get everyone on board? Because she was obviously so loved, but it's also very clear that they are very protective of her. Every single person that came on that screen, you can tell they're protective. Like they're protective of her, the legacy, the story. And so what drew you to the story? What was that process like of being like, hey, I want to come tell this story? And how did you get people to just essentially open them, like cut themselves open like that?
I think it's two things, right? Number one, the Wilsons at the very beginning, really one of the probably the first conversation that we ever had with them, said, "Would you be making this film if our daughter wasn't killed?" Right?
Mm.
And it's a very hard question to be asked when you've been doing this a long time and made lots of different movies, and
Yeah.
you've never kind of faced that question before.
Right. Yeah.
And there's only one answer to it, right? Which is the honest one, which is no, we wouldn't be telling this story. It would be almost impossible to make a movie without that. At the same time, it was that question, I think, and that directness that, in a way had all these people coming around the Wilsons and kind of circling the wagons around them to protect them. I
Yeah.
think there was a sense from Austinites, from the DAs, from, even from Cash, this sense of this beautiful family from this small town. Their daughter came to Austin and this terrible thing happened to her here.
Right.
And we're going to make sure to get justice for them. We're going to make sure to take care of them, and we're going to make sure to kind of have empathy and engage with them on a human level.
Right.
And that was so palpable, to Marina's point, at each and every stage. And so access is often a really hard thing to come by. But because of where it started with the Wilsons and that kind of directness and the kind of, integrity and kind of
Yeah.
honesty in which we dealt with the Wilsons, kind of allowed everybody else to go, well, if they said yes to you,
Yeah.
right, we're here to support them.
Love that.
So you tell us what you need, and we're gonna help deliver it.
But then it comes down to getting people to open up, which, is kind of my specialty. And so you start with, it's okay for them to talk, and then, allowing the silence
Mm.
in just there's just an art to like getting people to open up, and this was like a perfect story where people were willing. I'm talking about the outer people as well as the family, of course, but it's like they were willing to be really open and raw and vulnerable.
You mentioned this in the post-screening panel, and it struck me. The thing that stood out the most to me is the care that you took with this. It wasn't exploitative. It didn't come out as opportunistic. You know what I mean? I feel like the focus on the family and who she was as a person really helped with that. Like, I think a lot of filmmakers would tell this, it'd be all about the crime. It'd be salacious. It'd be this murder. It would like double down on it as the main plot. But it felt like your documentary, it was almost, the murder was almost the subplot. Almost is what it felt like.
Oh, and good. So, that's what we wanted.
Yeah. It's like the story of who Mariah was the plot. And so I'm just so curious, like, how did you guys make that decision? Was that the point from the beginning? And you just knew from the beginning, we're not going to turn this into this like murder thing. We're going to concentrate on this woman and the family.
Well, for me, it was from the beginning because I don't make true crime films and I don't really like true crime, although I have a lot of friends who do. And it seems like everyone is really into it. I'm not really exactly sure why, but Evan came to me and wanted to do the right thing by the family, and I was on board for that. And then it was really like a calibration of, I love that you mentioned that the crime is the subplot, because that's really what we were trying to do while we were showing who she was, what she worked to become, how she was on the cusp of becoming that. I don't know, Evan, I'm sure you have more to add to that.
I'll just say from the very beginning, this was the intention, right? And I think if you look at, I've worked on lots and lots of films that happen to tell stories that are surprising once you sit in the seat, but we all need hooks, right, in order to get you there. And so the intention from the very beginning was, okay, well, there is something kind of loud about this story, and there is something that will draw people into it. But I think from the very beginning there was this deep other layer of the humanity of the story, who Mariah really was, why people talked about her in this really unique, special way as this character with a superpower. And I'll also credit Netflix. I mean, from the very beginning, Netflix was on board with supporting the vision that Marina had for this film and that I had for this film. And so, it's very nice when we hear people taking away from it what we intended. And I think when you said, I really wanted to hug the Wilsons, I mean, I watched someone say to Matt after the second screening, I don't know you, but I really want to hug you. And he goes, you can hug me. And that for me and for Marina standing there witnessing that, right, that's the purpose in a way, is to show that kind of humanity out of something so tragic.
I just want to say the first thing that we filmed in Vermont with the Wilsons was the scene where they walk out to their garden and there's a little plaque. And I'd never really experienced a shoot like that where like my crew was crying. And that day it was like, oh my God, like we're going here. And they were so willing to go there and be open, and it was so raw, and they were so vulnerable, and it was like, wow, this is something really special. We have to like hold on to this. It's very precious. So that's what we really tried to show.
Have you ever told a lie that got out of hand? Then you don't want to miss catching Dear Evan Hansen on stage at ZACC Theater April 8th through May 17th. See what happens when one small lie snowballs into viral fame and Evan is forced to choose between the truth and the sense of belonging he's always craved before everything unravels. It's a story that's both funny and heart-wrenching. It's impossible to shake. And it features powerhouse songs like Waving Through a Window and You Will Be Found. This Grammy Award-winning music speaks to a generation who grew up online but longed for genuine connection. And music and lyrics are by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, the EGOT-winning duo behind La La Land and The Greatest Showman. The Washington Post calls Dear Evan Hansen one of the most remarkable shows in musical theater history, and it is going to be on stage at ZACC Theater. So get your tickets now at zactheater.org. For nearly 50 years, Austin Community Foundation has been a trusted partner in local philanthropy for individuals, families, and businesses looking to do good in Central Texas. So they invite you to Austin in Common on Tuesday, April 14th at ACL Live Movie Theater. Austin in Common is your opportunity to gather as neighbors, donors, and change makers, demonstrating that when we come together, we can solve problems and create a vibrant and equitable Austin for everyone. 3 community leaders will share their personal stories, rich histories, and diverse experiences of living, working, and raising families in Austin. This is more than a fundraising event. It's an opportunity to connect, celebrate, and invest in a brighter future for the city we call home. Because no matter who you are or where you're from, we all have Austin in common. By attending or sponsoring this event, you're not just supporting a cause, you're strengthening the foundation of Austin itself. More details are at austinincommon.org. You know, there's a huge responsibility in making a film like this, right? Was there ever a time when you thought about backing out? Was there ever a time like when you're like, oh, this is a lot. Like, we got to take a second. Because, you know, I'm going to be super honest with you. I am not a filmmaker, but if I'm hanging out with a bunch of people crying at once, it's gonna make me take a minute. You know what I mean? So was there ever a time when you're like, okay, let's take a step back. Should we be doing this? What were the hard parts you were running into?
I would say that it's all of what we're talking about here, right? I think there's maybe some people who don't fully understand what filmmaking is, right? On a documentary like this, you are entering like the most intimate relationship with strangers that you could possibly, begin,
Yeah.
right? And you are responsible in a way for
Mm.
making sure that everything that you've said to them, right, every assurance that you've given the Wilsons in this case, every conversation you've had with them about what their hopes and dreams are for the film, um are like, that is a bond that you're
Yeah, you got to
making.
make good.
And yeah, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, and the way that I was raised, like, you don't mess with that. Like, that is a kind of code that you have to live by.
Yes.
And so the responsibility of, you're still making a movie, and nobody quite knows, no matter how many times you talk about it or how many times you share your feelings or your goals. At the end of the day, the Wilsons didn't fully know what movie they were going to watch,
Right.
right? And what parts of, filming with them we were going to include or not. What influence Netflix as the studio might have or not. And so what's the solution to that? Like, really strong communication and
Yeah.
really, and a really clear intention. And like I said, I mean, the Wilsons were very much, in lockstep with us all the way through, as were Netflix, and kind of everyone was there supporting one another.
My dad used to say, when you give your word, you keep your word. And that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, and it gets a whole lot more complex when you're talking about big movies and
Yeah.
studios and people whose trauma is their own,
Yeah.
right? And again, we were very honest with the Wilsons from the very beginning, but did they know that, the 911 call was going to play 4 minutes into the movie,
Ooh,
or things like that?
yeah.
You have to be honest with them and prepare them for that. And frankly, you have to believe that relationship that you've built and that trust you've built over time is going to help with the result, which in this case it did.
It did. So now there are a couple of, and I'm going to put this in quotations for everyone listening. There are a couple of villains in this story. So one obviously being the killer, Caitlin Armstrong, and the other one you would think would be Colin Strickland, who wasn't directly involved in the killing at all, but was a big part of what was perceived as a love triangle. But in the documentary, both of these people are humanized, and the viewer, it's weird. It's like at some point I had this moment where I was like, I don't understand Caitlin's point of view, but I'm like, oh man, this is a really, really, again, excuse the language, just like a fucked up human. Like she did a fucked up thing. She did not, and I started thinking like, how many times in my life have I done something really fucked up? And then I think about Colin and the fact that he even was willing to be in the movie and like be like, oh yeah, this is how this has affected me. This is how I'm kind of paying for what has happened. I thought was such a bold choice. It was such a bold choice to kind of like humanize these two people. And I'm just curious, why did you do that when it could have really, really gone a different way?
Well, because you want to hear from everyone. You want to hear everyone's point of view and what they think. And, we've reached out to Caitlin, no response. Reached out to her sister, no response. Colin was willing to let us film him, which is pretty amazing when that comes on screen.
Wild. It's wild.
I mean, I wanted to interview him, but he didn't really want to be interviewed. He just wanted to be filmed. And I don't even, although I'd like to hear more from him, I think just seeing him and what it's done to him is enough.
It's a physical difference. You could see a physical difference in what this man looked like. It was wild.
Yeah.
I think it also brings up, and it's why we presented it in this way, right? Which is the authentic way, right? It's the truthful and honest way. But ultimately, there is this question of how did this happen, right? Like, how could something like this happen? And I think it brings up all kinds of questions, and we wanted to present those questions to the audience without turning it into something fictional or untrue, right? And so I think one of the most striking things that came out of the telling of this story is, how the behavior of these two individuals affected all the other people in the periphery of this story, and the questions that it forced them to contend with. And Matt Wilson says this thing in the film about, can I ever trust anyone I meet ever again?
Yes.
When this person who everyone thought was normal and a good person did this terrible, the worst thing you could almost possibly do, right? And those are questions that we as storytellers are fascinated by, because they expose something about our human experience that is universal, right? This idea of how much do we know somebody, what is good, what is evil, how do things like this happen? And so Colin is a major component of the exploration of that, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes when we think about things like this, murder, we have this very specific idea of this terrible monster that could do something like this. And then you see this very normal looking, this normal seeming woman. And since watching the documentary, I have talked to so many women in my life about it, and just about the kind of unspoken girl code that it felt like Caitlin broke when she decided to take Mariah's life instead of just having a conversation, woman to woman. It feels like basic girl code. You just have a conversation, and she didn't do it. And so it makes me kind of think about what things you might have been hoping to get out of sharing this story. Because for me, what you got is like these conversations with my girlfriends, like we're all on the same page, right? Like we all agree that it makes you think about, like you said, to your point, Evan, like what kind of person would do something like this? Could it be any of us, right? If we are not doing what we need to do. So what are the takeaways you're hoping that people have by sharing this story?
I think when you watch the film, which I obviously hope every listener does, right? There's this moment at the end of the trial where Mariah's father, Eric Wilson, stands up in front of the press and gives a statement. And really, that's to me one of the major takeaways from the film, which is he's talking about the basics, right? We're living in this really complicated world right now, and we don't need to get into that, right? But we're living in this really complex world. And what Eric says towards the end of this movie is really, really basic, right? Treat people with respect. Be honest in how you live your life and live your relationships, right? And these are things that seem obvious, but the movie kind of serves as a reminder of those things. And to your point a minute ago, whether it's having a conversation with someone that you're in conflict with, as compared to, doing a violent act in the extreme, or just being a good neighbor or a friend or helping out a fellow Austinite or wherever you're from, like, at the end of the day, that's what this movie is about. It's about family and community. It's about perseverance. It's about, someone who found so much beauty in what they did for their livelihood, in Mariah riding her bike. It's about the beauty in which they still hold this person who's no longer here. And so, there's this plot of the movie of what happened to Mariah. And that's super engaging, obviously. But the movie's really about all those other things, right?
Right.
And that's what I certainly hope people take away from it.
Yeah, and life is precious. And I think, kind of what Evan's saying, what Eric Wilson said, be honest.
Yeah.
If certain people would have been more honest, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just say Texas Monthly said, just one quote, which is, "We're left to reflect solely on Wilson's life cut short and come away with a more visceral understanding of what we mean when we call a crime senseless."
Yeah.
Right. And that's a kind of byproduct of the bigger thing I was talking about. But at the end of the day, this is a real reminder that, violence is not the answer.
Evan, Marina, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thanks for chatting with me. Thanks for making the film, honestly.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to the documentary in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our CityCast Austin newsletter. And if you really love CityCast Austin and you want to support us and you want to continue to hear conversations like this one, become our neighbor. Go to membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.